Now I'd like to show you how to level your textures and the importance of doing that. Leveling your textures is a term that I use and some of my colleagues have used, and I'm not sure if that's the correct term, but basically all it means is using the full range that we were talking about in the normal map, but also in the diffuse. I'll go ahead and delete that and shift select all of these layers and Control E, which merges them, and I'll delete that. And so overall, this texture is too dark, and prove it, I will go ahead and add a levels adjustment layer, and you'll see that this whole area, this whole range is not even being used. So if we bring this up to use the full range, you'll notice the whole texture kind of gets brighter, but all it's really doing is using that full range. If you wanted to make this texture a little bit darker overall, I would just move the middle slider to make it a little bit darker, but you still want this whole range in use. And the reason is you want a predictable way for this to react to lighting inside of your game engine or inside of anywhere, even if you're rendering in 3D Max or anything. Also, you'll notice when you do increase the range of your texture, it kind of oversaturates it usually. So usually whenever I do this, I also add a hue and saturation. I usually tone the saturation down a little bit. And you'll notice if I turn both of these off, turn them back on, it's just using more of a range. The darks are still there, the mids are a little bit brighter, and the brights are just brighter. Now, to show why you want to do this, I have a level here in Unreal, and basically I just have the unleveled texture here on a BSP. And what you'll notice is this is just a white light that I'll go into its properties. You'll see that it's just a white light with a value of 1. So this is taking the texture to its brightest peak, which is 1. Now overall, this is just looks too dark in the way it's reacting to the light. So to get something that looks better and is more correct, I would have to crank this up to even 4 just to get it to start going past its brightness values. If I type in 3, that looks about right. But we don't want to have to brighten our textures by using a light. We want them to be correct in the first place. Not only that, it's going to help with consistency when you have different textures at different levels. So I'll go in here into the material and just pick the new leveled one. And I'll close it. Now you'll immediately notice that at a value of 1, it's correct. And if I set it to 2, you'll notice it starts blowing out. So now you can darken the light and add bright point lights of interest without having to get crazy numbers with your lights. And if I had some other object on this that had a different texture, as long as that texture is leveled, they should fit together with the same lighting. This is a common mistake I see a lot, and even in the game industry, many people do it. But just a simple thing as that really help tie your scene together and help things look consistent and also eye-pleasing with contrast. And that's pretty much how you would level your textures. Now, usually if you have an ambient occlusion, I would level it before you add the ambient occlusion. Or you can do it after. It's worth experimenting. So that, in a nutshell, is why you need to level your textures. So that's pretty much it for the basics of Photoshop, tiling a texture, creating a normal map with the NVIDIA filter, leveling your textures, going over some of the UI. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to start going through a practical example and how to texture that example from 3ds Max, Photoshop, then into Unreal.